The number on your savings account statement is wrong. Not the balance, that part is technically accurate. The number that's wrong is what you assume it means. You look at the statement, the balance went up, and some part of your brain says, good, I'm doing the thing. But your bank knows something you don't. A number increasing slower than inflation is, in purchasing power terms, indistinguishable from a number going down. It is a number going down. And by the time I'm done with this video, you're going to understand that the most basic financial advice you were given, spend less, save more, let it compound, was assembled around products specifically designed to make other people money, including the people who gave you the advice in the first place. Here's the thesis. The conventional financial advice most Americans receive is not dishonest, but it was built around products and institutions that profit from your compliance with it. The compound interest works, but it works for your bank first and for you second. I'm going to walk you through 4 mechanisms that make this true with actual numbers, actual math checked against real sources, and actual examples, not theory. Mechanics. The image I want you to carry through this entire video is a vending machine. You put money in, you expect something back. The machine keeps most of the energy, spits back something significantly smaller than what you put in, and charges you for the service. Everything I'm going to tell you is really a variation on one question. At what point did you assume the machine was fair? In a few minutes, I'm going to show you what 30 years inside the machine looks like with specific dollar amounts. But first, let me show you the quietest, most sophisticated version of the machine. The one running right now on the money you're most proud of protecting. There's a fee structure inside the American retirement system that is technically disclosed, but almost never understood. A median income 2-earner family contributing consistently to their 401k over a full working career will lose close to $155,000 in fees over a lifetime, according to research published by the policy organization Demos. Not from bad investment choices, not from market crashes, from fees. Fees that were disclosed in a 70-page plan document that nobody read and that most people don't even know exist. A Government Accountability Office survey found that 41% of Americans are unaware they pay 401k fees at all. Not that they know about fees and don't care. They genuinely don't know the fee is there. Here's how the mechanics work. You contribute to your 401k. Your contributions go into mutual funds inside the plan. Those mutual funds charge what's called an expense ratio, a percentage of your assets taken every single year to cover fund management, administration, and marketing. The median expense ratio for plans with fewer than 100 participants is 1.29% per year, according to Demos. For large plans with over 10,000 participants, it drops to 0.43. The smaller your company, the more you pay. That's the system. Now let's run the numbers in plain language. Analysis from PensionBee, citing Pew Charitable Trust research, shows that a 1% annual fee difference reduces a retirement account balance by 30% over 40 years compared to a low-fee alternative. 30%. Make that concrete. Imagine 2 coworkers. Same salary, same contribution rate, same gross investment returns. Worker A is in a plan with 0.5% in total annual fees. Worker B is in a plan charging 1.5%. After 30 years at a 7% gross return, according to Pocket Guard's fee modeling, Worker A walks away with $574,000. Worker B has $432,000. The difference is $142,000. That money didn't evaporate. It was transferred legally, contractually, to the plan administrator and fund managers. The machine takes the real return. But here's the layer most people don't know about. It's not even that the fees are unusually high. It's that the people who select which funds appear in your 401k have a financial incentive to select expensive funds. The mechanism is called revenue sharing. When a fund company wants to be included in a 401k plan, it sometimes pays the plan administrator a portion of its management fee, called a 12b-1 fee or a shareholder servicing fee. The more expensive the fund, the more money flows back to the administrator. And since plan administrators are not required under current law to act strictly in participants' best financial interests when assembling the fund menu only to be what the law calls prudent, the expensive funds stay on the menu. This isn't fraud, it's incentive alignment. The machine is not broken. The The machine is working exactly as designed. You're just not the primary beneficiary. Stay with me, because this next part changes everything. The 401k fee story is infuriating enough on its own, but it's actually the smaller problem. The bigger problem is what most people do with the money they don't put in their retirement account. Right now, as of July 2026, the national average savings account interest rate is 0.61% per year. According to Bankrate's survey of more than 500 institutions, that's the average across the entire banking system. Chase Bank's standard savings account pays 0.01% APY, according to NerdWallet data from mid-2025. That is $1 per year on $10,000. $1. You could find 2 quarters on a parking lot and outperform Chase's savings account for the year. And yet, Americans hold roughly $11 trillion in savings and checkable deposit accounts, according to Statista data from early 2025. Now, layer in inflation. As of May 2026, inflation was running at approximately 2.7% per the FDIC and US News, reporting on Bureau of Labor Statistics data. So, average savings rate, 0.61%. Inflation, 2.7%. Real return, negative 2.1% per year on every dollar you're safely saving. The number on the statement goes up. The purchasing power in the real world goes down. The machine takes the real return. Here's a parable. There's a man, call him Gerald. Gerald did everything he was told. Every time a financial article told him to build a 6-month emergency fund, Gerald built it. He put $40,000 into a savings account at his brick-and-mortar bank, the one with the reliable logo, the friendly branch manager, and the foam cup with the bank's name on it at his desk, and he left it there for 10 years. In nominal terms, Gerald earned roughly $4,500 in interest over that decade. He felt responsible. He felt secure. He told people he had a solid emergency fund. But in real terms, adjusted for the average inflation rate of that same decade, Gerald's $40,000 lost approximately $6,000 to $7,000 in purchasing power. He ended up, 10 years later, able to buy less with his money than when he started. He had done exactly what he was told. He had executed the advice flawlessly. He went backwards anyway. You might be thinking, the problem is Gerald didn't save enough. That's the surface reading. But actually, Gerald's problem had nothing to do with quantity. Gerald's problem was vehicle. A savings account is an emergency buffer. It was always marketed as the foundation of financial security, but it is mathematically incapable of building real wealth over time when inflation consistently outpaces its yield, which is, historically, most of the time. That distinction between the tool that's right for emergencies and the tool that's right for building wealth is the one that almost nobody explains clearly. Because the institution most likely to explain it to you is the same institution selling you the savings account. Here's what messes with your head most. The savings account feels safe because the nominal number never drops. Your bank statement never says your purchasing power declined by 2.1% this year. It says your balance is $42,000 up from $40,000. Your brain reads progress. It doesn't read inflation-adjusted loss. The bank statement is optimized to show you the number that feels good, because feeling good means you stay. You don't switch banks. You don't ask questions. You don't move the money. The machine is elegant, and the machine takes the real return. Let me put this in 30-year terms, because that's the horizon that matters if you're between 30 and 55. Take $100,000, place it in a savings account earning 2% annually, which is generous relative to the current national average. But let's be fair. After 30 years, you have approximately $182,000 per Cash Sprouts modeling. Now take that same $100,000 and put it in an S&P 500 index fund. According to Fidelity, the S&P 500 averaged 30-year return from January 1996 through December 2025 was 10.4% annually. At that rate, after 30 years, your $100,000 becomes approximately $1.7 million. The difference between those two decisions, same person, same discipline, same original amount, is roughly $1.5 million. That's not a financial product pitch. That's compound math. And the difference between the machine that delivers it and the machine that doesn't is the single most consequential financial decision most people are not making clearly. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content, otherwise YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. Most financial channels stop the argument here. Fees bad, index funds good, savings accounts for emergencies only. And that's correct as far as it goes. But it doesn't answer the real question. If this is so obvious, if the math is this stark, why do 42% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings total, according to Zippia's 2025 research? Why do 54% of American households have no dedicated retirement savings at all, according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances? Why does the median retirement balance for workers aged 55 to 64 sit at $185,000, according to the Federal Reserve and confirmed by Kiplinger's 2026 analysis, when the number of Americans say they need to retire comfortably is 1.46 million? Why is the gap that enormous? The answer is where this video actually gets interesting. Here's the part that never makes it into a retirement calculator. And honestly, it barely makes it into the financial advice conversation at all. You know the math. The gap between the national average savings rate, 0.61%, and a 30-year broad market index return is roughly 9 to 10 percentage points, compounding annually. That gap, over time, is the difference between a comfortable exit from the workforce and spending your 60s doing math you really don't want to do. But knowing the gap and having a system to close it are two very different things. And most people who know the numbers still haven't built the structure around them. I built something called the Exit Code, specifically to address this. It's 8 chapters of analysis built on 50 years of retirement data, the math of actually exiting the workforce, not the motivational version of it. Based on what we've been talking about today, 2 elements from that book are particularly relevant. The first is what I call the 4% trap. The 4% withdrawal rule, the idea that you can safely pull 4% from your portfolio per year in retirement without running out, was based on research from the 90s using a specific sequence of market returns and assuming a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 55 and live to 90, you're looking at a 35-year runway. The math breaks. The dynamic withdrawal method I lay out in the Exit Code adjusts your withdrawal rate based on actual current market conditions rather than a fixed percentage, and based on historical data. That approach has extended portfolio life by 7 to 12 years. That's the difference between running out of money at 76 and being financially stable at 88. The second is the lazy portfolio, a specific allocation built on 50 years of actual returns, data that has historically outperformed actively managed funds over 30-year windows. Not by picking winners. By getting the structure right and leaving it alone, every year the compounding gap on this goes unaddressed is a year of real wealth you don't get back. The Exit Code is available through the link in the description for less than a dinner out. No filler, 8 chapters, pure research. If you're somewhere in your 40s or 50s and your retirement plan is currently a feeling rather than a number, the book converts that feeling into a specific date and a specific target. That's the only version of this that actually works. Remember Gerald? He eventually sat across from a financial advisor who told him something that sounded wrong but wasn't. Gerald, you don't have a savings problem. You have a vehicle problem. Gerald had spent 30 years doing the behavioral work correctly, setting money aside consistently, never touching it, resisting the lifestyle inflation that gets most people. He'd done all of that, and then handed that money to the machine that takes the real return. Because nobody had explained that discipline and vehicle are 2 separate variables that both need to be correct. What nobody had told Gerald, and what I want to be very specific about, is that there are 3 levels to how money actually grows. Level 1 is preservation. Keeping the nominal number stable, not losing the face value. That's the savings account. Level 2 is pace. Keeping up with inflation, not falling behind in real purchasing power. That requires something above the inflation rate, a high-yield savings account at minimum, or short-duration bonds or CDs. Level 3 is growth, actually increasing your real wealth over time in a way that outpaces inflation by several percentage points. That requires assets that compound in real terms, broadly diversified equities, real estate with cash flow, or some combination. The problem is that almost every piece of financial advice aimed at ordinary people targets level 1 and frames it as responsibility. Level 1 is the floor. The floor is not the destination. Here's something that most people in this conversation find quietly unsettling. Think about who writes the financial literacy curriculum that reaches most American kids. Banks are not just permitted to fund and design financial literacy programs in schools, they are actively encouraged to do so and can receive regulatory credit for it. The OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, explicitly states that banks providing support to in-school financial literacy programs can qualify for Community Reinvestment Act consideration. The American Bankers Association runs a national program called Teach Children to Save. In 2025 alone, more than 11,000 bank volunteers from nearly 500 banks participated in financial education events for K-8 students. The Treasury Secretary that year recorded a video specifically to be played during these presentations. None of this is hidden. Now, think about the incentive structure embedded in the curriculum. Who teaches kids about savings accounts? The institutions that profit from holding deposits. Who explains how compound interest works using a savings account as the example? The institutions currently paying 0.38% while lending that same money out at 7% on auto loans and 18% on credit cards. Who designs a lesson on responsible financial habits? The same entities that charge up to $12 per month in maintenance fees on the accounts those responsible habits are supposed to fund. The lesson is not false. The lesson is just heavily weighted toward the tools that generate revenue for the institutions funding the lesson. This is not a conspiracy. It is systems thinking. You follow the incentives, and the incentives describe the curriculum. The machine doesn't just run inside your bank. It runs inside your 7th grade money class. The result is measurable. A 2025 assessment found that only 49% of US adults could demonstrate basic financial literacy. According to the National Association of State Boards of Education, 49%, barely half the country, can answer fundamental questions about how money actually works. And the institutions most positioned to close that gap, the ones with the money, the platforms, and the established school relationships, are the same ones that structurally benefit from the gap remaining open. I'm not angry about this. I'm fascinated by it. The way you'd be fascinated by a watch mechanism that's been running perfectly for 100 years. The machine is elegant, and the machine takes the real return. Here's what the machine runs on at its core. The conventional financial system doesn't keep people in a poor wealth position through deception. It does it through two psychological mechanisms that are so effective most people never perceive them at work. The first is nominal illusion. When your savings account balance goes from $40,000 to $42,000, your brain reads progress. It sees a number going up and releases a small reward signal. It does not automatically compute that inflation eroded 2.7% of the real value. The bank statement is designed to show you the nominal number because the nominal number feels good, and feeling good means you stay. You don't switch to a high yield account. You don't move money into an index fund. You don't read the fee disclosure. The machine is sticky because the output feels like winning. I've spent more than 10 years running my own business, surrounded by accountants and fiscal lawyers who showed me how money actually moves. The moment that shifted how I think about all of this was the first time I compared what a fee schedule actually said versus what I had assumed it said. The gap between the two was not cosmetic. The machine had been running the whole time. I just hadn't been tracking the output. The second mechanism is loss aversion. Keeping money in a savings account feels safe because the nominal number never visibly drops. Moving it into an index fund feels risky because the balance might go down on a bad Tuesday. What the brain doesn't naturally account for is that the savings account is delivering a guaranteed real loss every year. Your brain is choosing a certain slow loss over a volatile potential gain. That's not rational in the mathematical sense, but it is very human. The vending machine is not just a financial structure. It's a psychological structure. It's designed to feel fair. It's designed to feel safe. The comfort it provides is real. The return it provides is not. Here's a story that illustrates the cost. During the financial crisis of 2008 and early 2009, the S&P 500 fell roughly 50% from its 2007 high. It was genuinely terrifying. And a large portion of American investors responded by pulling money out of the market and putting it into savings accounts and cash equivalents. That felt rational at the time. It felt responsible. What it actually did was lock in the loss. The market reached its bottom in March 2009. By 2013, it had fully recovered. By 2017, it had more than doubled from the 2009 lows. The people who stayed in or who added to their positions during the drop were made whole and then some. The people who ran to the savings account missed the most powerful recovery period in modern market history. They fed the machine that takes the real return at exactly the moment the machine would have paid them instead. Now, you might be thinking, okay, fine, index funds over savings accounts, I get it. But that's the surface conclusion, and I want to go deeper. The savings account is not a bad product. Emergency funds belong in savings accounts. Money you need within the next 12 to 18 months belongs in savings accounts. Short-term goals, a car purchase, a home down payment, a medical fund belong in savings accounts or short-duration CDs. The savings account does its job correctly. The problem is using it for a job it cannot do, building real wealth over decades. You wouldn't use a hammer to tune a piano. Both are legitimate tools. They are not interchangeable. The median American aged 55 to 64 has $185,000 saved for retirement. Per Federal Reserve data cited by Kiplinger and confirmed by Frank Finley's 2026 analysis, the number those same Americans say they need to retire comfortably is 1.46 million. The gap is $1.27 million. That gap is not a discipline gap. Most people in that cohort worked for decades and were consistent. It's a compounding gap. It's 3 decades of being in a vehicle that could not close the distance between where they were and where they needed to be. And the machine ran the whole time, silently, annually, compounding in the wrong direction. Here's the case study I want you to sit with. David is 42 years old. He earns $80,000 a year. He has $50,000 in a savings account. He built up over 8 years. Genuine discipline. He never touched it. He's proud of it. He also has a 401k from his current employer worth about $60,000. And he contributes enough to capture his employer match. He has never checked his expense ratios. On his current path, here's what 23 years looks like, the distance between now and age 65. The $50,000 in the standard savings account at 0.61% annually becomes approximately $57,000 by the time he retires. Inflation at 2.7% per year means that $57,000 has real purchasing power equivalent to roughly $32,000 in today's dollars. He will have lost approximately $18,000 in real wealth while believing he was being responsible. Meanwhile, the 401k, let's use the median small plan expense ratio, of 1.29% will underperform a comparable low-cost index fund by somewhere between $90,000 over the same period, depending on contribution, growth, and market conditions. That's not catastrophic. That's just what the machine takes. Now, the alternate David. Same income, same discipline, same starting point. He keeps $20,000 in a high-yield savings account as his emergency buffer. That's 6 months of essential expenses. He moves the remaining $30,000 into a broad index fund. He runs his 401k fee audit, switches from his current funds into the lowest cost S&P 500 index option in his plan, dropping his expense ratio from 1.29 to 0.08%. The 401k fee difference alone, compounded over 23 years, is material. And the $30,000 he redirected to a broad index fund at a historical 7% real return becomes approximately $150,000 in real purchasing power by the time he turns 65, versus roughly $10,000 to $12,000 in real purchasing power if it had stayed in the savings account. Same David, same discipline, same amount of money. The machine he chose made the entire difference. I do want to acknowledge that someone watching this right now is thinking, but my bank has been with me for 20 years. They know my name. They send me birthday messages, to which I'd say, that's genuinely touching. The teller is a real person who probably is pretty good at their job. Also, 0.01% annual interest is not a relationship. it's an acquaintance who takes your money. The practical framework comes down to 3 piles. And where each pile lives, pile 1 is the liquidity money you need within 18 months, including your emergency fund. This goes in a high-yield savings account, not a brick-and-mortar bank paying the national average of 0.61%. An online bank where you can currently find rates of 3 to 4% APY as of mid-2026. You're not taking on additional risk. You're choosing a different machine. Same FDIC insurance, same liquidity, 6 to 7 times the return. This is the easiest money you'll ever make. Pile 2 is medium-term capital money for goals between 2 and 7 years out. This lives in a combination of high-yield savings, certificates of deposit, and possibly short-duration bond funds. The goal is not to beat the market. The goal is to not guarantee yourself a real loss. At 3 to 4% in a high-yield account with inflation at 2.7, you're barely ahead. But barely ahead beats definitely behind. Pile 3 is long-term wealth money with a horizon beyond 7 years that you will not need for daily life. This belongs in low-cost, broadly diversified index funds. The expense ratio target is below 0.1% per year. The Fidelity 500 Index Fund charges 0.015%. At $10,000 invested, that's $1.50 per year, not 1.5%. $1.50. The machine that charges 0.015% instead of 1% over 30 years, at 7% gross returns, produces outcomes that differ by 6 figures. Every decimal point in the expense ratio is a machine taking the real return. Find the machine that barely takes anything. Gerald, by the way, the man who spent 3 decades in the wrong vehicle, figures this out at 56. He still has 9 years of compounding available, plus Social Security, plus a paid-off home. It wasn't too late. But what stayed with him wasn't the money. It was this. I was disciplined. I did the right behavior. I just had the wrong vehicle. And nobody ever explained to me that those are 2 separate variables that both have to be correct. That sentence is the whole video. We started with the idea that the number on your savings account statement is wrong. Not false, just incomplete. The nominal number going up is real. The purchasing power going down is also real. And the machine running silently between those 2 facts, taking the real return annually, compounding, over decades, was engineered by people who understood compound interest extremely well. It just wasn't engineered for you. 3 specific things to do this week. First, run your 401k fee audit. Log in, pull up your current fund holdings, look up each fund's expense ratio. If anything is above 0.5%, find the lowest cost index fund option in your plan and move to it. Based on Demos research, a median income household switching from high fee to low fee funds inside the same account can recover tens of thousands of dollars in retirement wealth without changing a single dollar of their contributions. Second, split your savings by time horizon, today. Look at everything in your standard savings account and ask when you actually need each dollar. Your emergency fund, 6 months of essential expenses, moves to a high-yield online account at 3 to 4%. The rest gets assessed and deployed based on how many years you have before you need it. Third, calculate your real return, not the nominal number on the statement. Take your current interest rate or expected return, subtract the current inflation rate of approximately 2.7%, subtract your fee percentage. If that number is 0 or negative, you are feeding a machine that takes the real return. Find a different machine. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes, and the machine doesn't stop running between videos. This script is provided as written content for reading. All statistics are sourced from FDIC data, Bankrate, Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, Demos, PensionBee, Pew Charitable Trust Analysis, Fidelity, Kiplinger, NASB, and Bureau of Labor Statistics as reference